Good morning, everybody. We're going live, and we made a little of a head start in chapter 22 yesterday. We talked about how it is that Chokhmah acts as a bridge between the divine spiritual light that creates coming from above, from the source of divinity on the one hand, and then the concrete finite world on the other hand. The reason that's important is because we have been suggesting all along that Chokhmah, which is the attribute of Moshe, Chokhmah, often translated as wisdom, but it's a technical term. It's not really translatable. That attribute is what allows us to be able to function in this finite world, but in a way which allows us to maintain our sense of nothingness. Kind of feel like a nothing without the help. I get the help of other people. They grind you down into nothingness. Thank you. I needed that. You loser. Thank you. And that, of course, is crucial in allowing for a true humility, not a kind of a pious humility that's not genuine, but a true humility in which you don't feel threatened by other people because you're compact, right? You're not this expansive ego that feels compressed and threatened by other egos. Okay. So what I want to do, with your permission, is read really fast. We read about 10, 11 lines in the beginning of the chapter, but it's a little hard to kind of pick up. So we're just going to just read real fast. He says the following, so chapter 22, so when we talk about the attribute of Chokhmah, or the symbol that we're using to understand Chokhmah, is the Yud, the first letter in Hashem's name, which we're also calling the dot, the nikudah. So we're saying that there are two levels in that Yud. Ha'echad, what's the first level? The aspect which is in a state of concealment within itself. And that's the aspect of this dot, this creative dot of divine light, which, though it eventually will express itself through creating, but at this point, this aspect of the dot, of the Yud, it's not yet in the mode of expansion downwards or outwards, which expresses itself in dimensionality, which is, of course, will be necessary ultimately for the purpose of creation, through width, through length, etc., dimensionality. Of course, what letter in the divine name expresses that dimensionality? Hey, who said that? Checks in the mail, Zev. Oh my gosh, I feel better already.
And you thought no one was listening.
Yeah, I thought I closed my eyes and everybody's gone. Wake up. It's just a dream. Dahit galut hurak nikuda levada mavrik b'mocho. That this state of revelation, where it's just the dot in a state of concealment before is on the level of dimensionality. So that is a state, if we compare it to Zev's brain, for instance, so where it's just this intuitive flash of insight. Mavrik, just like a little flash. That's what mavrik means. It's not yet expressed in linguistic forms of letters of speech, right? To use kind of a mixed metaphor here, which is actually what he's doing here. I'm just translating or paraphrasing dimensionality. So kind of letters, words, and dimensionality. You understand, even though those are mixed metaphors, it's the same idea. Okay. ויובן זה ממה שנראה בחוש בבעל שכל גדול שנובעים אצלו תמיד המצאות שכליים חדשים ועמוקים ביותר שאי אפשר לגלותם ולסבירם למקבלים שיתפס בהשגה ממש. So when Zev is thinking of this brilliant idea, it first comes to him as this flash of light that's amorphous, right? Amorphous means lacking form. Morph means form. right? Shalom. So it's lacking form. So it's just this flash of light. Now, when we say it's an amorphous form, that even though in Zev's brain, which just took a vacation, where'd Zev go? That at that point, it's meaningful to Zev. That flash of insight is meaningful to Zev. It is meaningful to Zev internally, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody else because there's nothing, he can't share it because it's an amorphous flash of light that is nondescript. It's not taking the form of letters or any kind of concrete form. So it's not in the form of being grasped in a graspable way. You know, we talked about, to use a triple mixed metaphor, talking about a different, I think an image we use in a different class, how to have a handle. To grasp something, you have to have like something to hang on to, right? So this flash of insight, which we're calling the inner part of the nikudah, the concealed part of the nikudah, there's nothing to grasp onto because it's so amorphous. So obviously it's not something that can be shared with others. It hasn't yet reached the truly creative form. Ki merachef levad, it's like hovering. Ukmo mavrik, kum barak hamavrik levad. Ve'ein ha'inyan mugbal mitzuyar so adayin b'tziyur nikudah mugbelet. Ulatzmo ze maspik. So what's interesting is that this aspect of the creative flow or the creative impulse with regards to Zev's intellect. So at that point, it's actually an act of creation internal to him, right? Because there's this kind of flash of light, this kind of amorphous insight. So internal to Zev, it's called a revelation, but not vis-a-vis going further downwards. So if you want to share it with somebody else, like flowing more outwards, it's not ready for that. Unless it comes to a greater state of concreteness where it's actually graspable, until it has a handle, to use the metaphor. Okay. Now we're starting new material. That was just a quick review. So in the Hebrew, we're 3 lines from the bottom of page Kafav. And in the English, I don't know where we are. Wherever it is. Okay. So when we talk about that there can be a grasping of an idea on the level of Bina, that creative modality, not the level of Chokhmah, right? That's the previous modality, but the graspableness, made up that word, of this creative light when it's modulated through Bina. So that is when it's ribui pratim, multiplicity of details. V'chol prat hu mugbar latzmo. And every detail is isolated and defined by itself. That's unlike the type of grasping which exists in the more primal level of Chokhmah. That's where it's just a general amorphous dot, not divided into particular points, each one defined and delineated. Shekol ha'inyan sichli nitpas b'nikuda echad. Umimela me'ir ba ha'or b'yoter. So now here's the sort of an irony. The divine light, which is the ultimate, or Ein Sof, right? This light coming from the infinite God. Where is it shining to a greater extent? So it's shining to a greater extent the closer the creative stage is to essence. So when we talk about the level of Chokhmah, that first level, the Yud, right, in Hashem's name. So at that level, that the light shines more greatly. Why? Because it's closer to its essence. It hasn't been modulated and concealed. So at that point, the light is greater. as explained elsewhere, Dabhit Galut Ribuya Pratim Mit Alem Haor, that when something becomes greater to a greater sense of differentiated, when it becomes more revealed, to that extent, the original divine light is more concealed. Now, let's just bring this down to maybe use a metaphor to make it more comprehensible. And I've used this metaphor before. And that is, if someone says, okay, you eat some really good ice cream. Okay, right? And then you want to describe that to somebody. So there's the experience of the ice cream. Okay, that's the real thing. And then there is the articulation, description of eating that ice cream. Now, what's the real thing? The real thing is the actual taste. The actual taste. When you want to share that with somebody, right, by describing it, that is a kind of outward expression. I mean, the taste is something that it's only you, right? You can't share that with somebody else. You can give somebody else ice cream, but in terms of what you experienced, as far as I know, unless you're like a Vulcan mind lock, is that what it's called?
Of course, yeah, brother.
Is that what it's called, a Vulcan mind lock? So I think mind meld, thank you. A Vulcan mind meld. I just failed my course in Star Trekology. So a Vulcan mind meld. So then you could, I guess, share like with this Vulcan, your minds are linked and you could share the experience of the taste itself. But short of that, since we don't really have that technology except for on the TV. So therefore the only thing you can do is to try to share it by taking the raw actuality of that experience and putting it into words. And once you put something into words, so what's great about that is it is now in a state of heat galut, revelation. I can describe it. I can write a poem about it, right? The only problem is that's really neat. I've got all these letters, poetry describing that essential experience to somebody else, but there is a problem. Everybody appreciates that once you have like this linguistic form, ribui pratim, because the multiplicity of details, you're actually hiding the actual essence, the reality of it is the reality. It's the real thing. Coca-Cola, the real thing. It's the real thing, right? So that's the kind of the tension. As you go back in the creative flow downwards, to the extent that something is more hidden, amorphous, raw, it's more real, more raw and real, right? The rawness of realness, the realness of rawness. I'm in the poetry mood here. So as you flow downwards, it takes on concrete reality, describing it in different images using letters and words. So that's great because now it's shareable. It takes on concrete form, but you're actually moving away from the raw reality, the amorphous actual taste of the ice cream. Everybody got that? Does that make you want to have ice cream for breakfast? Chunky monkey?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm there. Ubiyoto adain. Bivchinat nikuda meir badakut or hamuskal. When it's still in the amorphous level, when it's just a nikuda, what does the word nikuda mean? Point, thank you. So there the light shines within it in this dakut, in this subtleness of the real thing, or a muskal. And therefore that subtle actuality, the rawness of the divine light, is not limited like it would be if it was more in the intellectual, analytical, linguistic level. Now get this, everybody. We're going to use Kabbalistic images in order to describe this further, that chokhmah, this level of the amorphous dot, is also called in Kabbalah water. Ubina rakia, and bina, the next level down, where it takes on form, rochav, width, orech, length, dimensionality, that's called rakia, firmament. You see, of course, those terms are coming from where? Water and firmament. What's the literary context of creation? When the Torah describes physical creation, do you realize that the Torah is using code language to actually, this is what bothers me when people try to too much use the Torah, and try to kind of harmonize it with scientific theory. You can go way off track, because the Torah is actually describing the much deeper than that. It's describing the pre-physical creation. It's describing the way the Kabbalah understands the downward flow from Ein Sof, from the infinite, a noble God, to Or Ein Sof, the light, and then that divine light, then ultimately taking form into concrete reality. So when the Torah talks about there was water, it doesn't mean just water like l'chaim, drink a glass of water. And when it says firmament, so that's usually translated like heavens or something like that, or right, or firmament, whatever firmament means. It's so funny. I will now translate this verse into English, firmament. And you can imagine someone saying, okay, yeah, that was English. No, firmament. What the heck is a firmament? When's the last time a normal speaker of English used the word firmament? Right? So, as if it helps. So rakia, though, apparently the simple meaning is it's the heavens up there, right? So, or the first level of the heavens. I don't know, stratosphere, whatever you call that thing up there. Okay? So, chokhmah is water, bina is rakia. Now, why? Why those terms? Water and firmament. Demaya naidi, as the Gemara explains, that water is naidi. It is mobile. It moves. It is amorphous. It can actually take on different forms. Now, just think about the image of water for a second. So I could take water and I could pour it into a vessel that's shaped like this. I can pour it in a vessel shaped like this. Water is, by itself, it doesn't have form. Isn't that true? It takes on the form of the kli, of the vessel. Okay? It's just like he uses another example of a type of liquid, which is the semen of the father. So that can take on any type of ultimately image or form that can be. So this is gonna I don't know about the science of this. Maybe in 10 years we'll find out that this is the science. So put on your seatbelts for this. This is based on the Gemara. The ad 40 yom mahani tefillah lehishtanot. So the Gemara explains that 40 days from conception, the seminal drop actually is somewhat amorphous and non-gender. Thank you. I was looking for that thing like genus or generic. Right. Gender. I knew there was an English word for this. God bless you. It's non-gendered. By the way, there's all this talk about gender confusion, transgender, and all this kind of stuff. So one could say on a certain real primal level, there's a certain truth to gender ambiguity, at least going back all the way down to based on this, the source, because this is saying that let's say that they're parents, and I went to the doctor today, mazel tov to us, we're gonna have a baby. Okay, so, and then they say, naturally, and to a certain extent, the truth, my wife and I never experienced this in terms of boy or girl, we didn't care, what's the difference, just be healthy, right? So but I can imagine whatever, someone cares. And so if they have a head on their shoulders, they will say, yeah, it should be a girl because they're easy to raise. So the Gemara actually says, you know what? You can daven for a girl the first 40 days because there's a kind of amorphousness. There's kind of a lack of finality to the form in the first 40 days of the seminal drop. So you could actually theoretically hope for and pray for for a certain gender during those first 40 days. Okay. So in any case, the point is that the liquid is pre-form, right? It has a kind of an amorphous nature to it. Okay. That's why Chokhmah is associated, expressed through the Torah with what word? Maya in Aramaic, or Mayim in Hebrew, which is water. The idea of amorphousness. Masha ein kein rakia. What's the other term? Firmament. Hu aglidu Maya. That's where the water takes on form. The rakia is like a structure. She'omed makom echad. It stands in one place. Ubilti mishtaneh. It doesn't change form. That's binah, the divine attribute of binah, right? Because it's now fleshed out, length, width, specific form, like the spatially represented by the two first letters of God's name. Ukmo lachar mem yom. Just like the developmental biological process of the seminal drop, then after 40 days, what happens? You can't daven anymore for a girl because now it's taken on concrete form. That the valad, the fetus, has now taken on concrete form within the womb of the mother. It can no longer change form. So we'll stop with that image and we will go on. Bezrat Hashem tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Rabbi, I read somewhere